Hello there. This is Dr. Nick Galli, mental performance coach for the U.S. speed skating national teams. And in this video today, I want to talk about a smarter way to size up the competition. And this has come out of several years now of working with athletes and other high-level performers and seeing them really get tripped up at times on what other people are doing and allowing that to make a tough game even tougher, regardless of what that game is. So I want to share a few tips today that things that have occurred to me over the years as I've worked with athletes who have done a lot of this comparison. So first off, I'd like to get you thinking, whether you're a parent or a coach or an athlete, about times when maybe you've been tempted to compare yourself or your ability to someone else's. So this could be in skating, or it could be in some other activity. So take a moment, you can press pause on me and either think about this or write it down. Okay, so hopefully you had a moment to think about that. My guess is that it wasn't too hard for you. A lot of us, especially high achievers, we know who our competitors are. We know who we're training with. We know who we're competing against. And it's natural for those people to be sort of a benchmark for us. And I think to a point, that's okay. Like anything else, in moderation. But there are times when it rises to a level where it's just not helpful. So comparison is a natural human phenomenon, but it's not always helpful. So if you look at this table here that was put together by a couple of psychology researchers, you can see that it can range in either direction, whether we are comparing upwards. So basically that just means we're comparing ourselves to someone who's superior to us, or who we see to be as superior to us, or whether we're comparing downward to people who aren't quite on our level. There can be both positive or negative effects. If you're comparing upward and to somebody who maybe is a role model in the skating world, that can provide you with motivation, hope, inspiration. If you're comparing downward, that might actually give you a good perspective on where you are. But on the converse side, you could be comparing upward to a point where you really begin to come down on yourself and or become jealous or envious of other people. Or at times you can look down on people as if you're better than them. And that's what we call scorn. So there's really a range of emotions that can come, and you can probably see which of these emotions might be more helpful to your performance and which might be less. The goal is for you, when you do feel the need to compare, to get to a point of hope, inspiration, and gratitude rather than dissatisfaction, envy, and scorn. These emotions up here, good for performance. These emotions down here, not so much. So I've got a few tips. Number one, I want you to be aware of your triggers. And for a lot of athletes these days, social media is a big trigger. We have apps for everything. We even have athlete-specific apps where you can show pictures and training logs. And there's just so much information out there about what your competitors are doing, how they're training. And to a point, this can be useful for you, right? We can leverage social media, but oftentimes social media can become a really dark place and take us down a rabbit hole that we don't really want to go. So social media would be an example of a trigger, right? Especially if you carry it around in your pocket. The first step in getting a handle on your comparison is to be aware of it so that you can do something about it, to at least rein it in. Oh, this is actually tip number two. Sorry, it's tip number one. When you do get that urge to compare, make sure you're balanced. A lot of times it becomes easy for us to see how we're inferior to someone, and we forget about ways that, we're at least on par, if not more skilled than someone else. So be balanced in your comparison. Don't go all one way or the other, because usually there is more balance than we think there is. Next tip, Try and depersonalize comparison. And this becomes really useful on competition day. I think either in long track or short track, especially in short track though, where it truly is you're racing your competitors right there. It's whoever crosses the line first. And I've got a picture here, a still from the movie Terminator. And in Terminator, Schwarzenegger or whoever is this machine, right? And he has a mission to take out someone or something. And he's very, as a robot, very mechanical in how he goes about his mission. And you see through his eyes, and this is what it looks like, right? And so I try to, when the athletes that I work with, I try to get them to have more of a Terminator mindset. Not be like the Terminator, but more like the Terminator in terms of kind of getting back to that balance and taking the comparison for what it's worth, using the useful information, extracting that, but not paying any attention to the extra stuff that really is going to be a distraction. You might be helpful to know what the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent are, what their tendencies are, but then end it there. You don't need to take it any further because you need to be focused on what you're doing. And then the final tip, I believe it's the final tip. Let's see. Yep. Have an exit strategy. Um, Set a timer for yourself. Use music to distract yourself. Have an alternative place for your focus. This is what we call having a plan, right? So if it's the comparison's unavoidable and you know that it's in a moment where you really need to focus, have something else to do. It's as simple as that. And if you do feel like you need to go on social media and see what other folks are up to, and you just can't resist because you're addicted, set a timer for yourself. We have, it's a simple strategy, but it can be, really useful because we can really get lost in these comparisons. Finally, I'm going to end with a quote here that I found online from actually a pastor named Steve Furtick. And I really like this quote. The reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. And isn't that just so true? That's what I was talking about before with the balance. This is why social media can be so deadly, because we only ever see, people only post the great things. They only want the positive image of themselves out there. And we have intimate knowledge of our own strengths, but also our deficiencies, our behind the scenes. So don't get caught up in this. Recognize that it's there and have a plan to deal with it. Hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for listening.